Hello, listeners. Welcome to the Fenix Logs. I am your host, Fenix Rising. Today, we are going to be discussing the years of 2015 through 2020, and which I am dubbing Escaping the False Light. So, what do I mean by escaping the false light? Well, let's go ahead and dive a little bit deeper and start with the very first point, which I call false enlightenment. Now, false enlightenment is obviously very plain, very obvious from the title of the point. I had believed in 2015 that I had achieved enlightenment. So I had quit practicing at this point because I had received information in my practice that basically this life is what you make it. So I had grown up believing that there was a plan or a universal point to this existence, right? Higher powers deem that life has a very specific purpose, and so I was living my life that way. And then as I am getting used to spiritualism, I'm over here learning that it doesn't matter, essentially, what I do. That reincarnation is a thing, and I'm going to be coming back here to learn lessons that I failed at learning before. So once I realized that point and I had that validation that sure, there is life after death, I don't know exactly what it pertains to, but reincarnation is a thing and I will be coming back here, I just kind of was like, you know what, that's enough. So I quit practicing. I believed that I had reached enlightenment, and I believe any being that eventually does achieve enlightenment has to go through this phase where they think if they've reached the top, and it's not completely different than what we actually experience in our day-to-day lives. So we take this concept and we can apply it to your everyday life, where you are working in your job field and you have developed your skills to a certain point. You think you're at the top of your game, and then something happens. You come across someone who has who's a lot better than you, and then all of a sudden your perspective shifts and you see there's another level to get to, right? It's just there's always something greater out there. And this is absolutely the same thing. There's absolute no difference here. So as beings that we have to go through these stages, I had thought I had reached the pinnacle. I believed that was enlightened. And what I remember feeling is just this crushing emptiness that it didn't matter, right? None of it mattered, and I would be coming back. Now, I knew previously that consciousness was energy, and science dictates that energy cannot die, it can only be transformed. So if our consciousness is energy, which it takes a whole lot of energy to create a human being and a conscious individual, then I knew that conscious energy could not dissipate. That was the logical application that I had used to blend religion and science into my viewpoint that yes, there is absolutely a possibility of an afterlife. It is absolutely plausible, and that is how I had focused on that and quantified that. So once I learned that reincarnation was a thing through my spiritual teachings, and I realized that nothing exactly mattered, that I would be coming back, I felt empty. I felt like enlightenment wasn't all that it was cracked up to be, and it was another cynical joke that life played on you, that you had to reach this point, and reaching that point would just lead to more pain. Now, that's where perspective comes into play, and we will get to how my perspective shifted later on down the line as I continue through these early logs of my initial awakening, the trials and tribulations that I went through, and then eventually breaking through to the other side. So the false enlightenment had made me want to quit practicing spiritualism. So I would use it solely as a way to diffuse my anger. In the middle of the day when I didn't want to get drunk and I was frustrated, I would do breathing exercises to help calm me down, just to let go and ultimately diffuse my anger. I used it as a tool, but that's all I viewed it as, was a tool to get by, a tool to get you through. I didn't know too much about the law of attraction. I didn't know a lot about other concepts. So as we move further here, life having no point, me feeling completely and utterly empty. And that emptiness recalled me back to the summer of 2012. If you remember back to episode 2, I had briefly mentioned that I had felt empty. I didn't specify the time frame. It was summer of 2012. I was coming home from a vacation and I had just felt completely empty. Now, I feel like there's been a trend where every point I'm at in my journey, every time I am about to transcend to the next level, there's a little hollow point. I feel empty, like I've just maxed out, and I feel empty because I've maxed out. So everything's kind of a stair step. It comes up, you level off, you feel empty, you feel you've reached the top, and then you feel alone and isolated in your beliefs and your thoughts, and then, ultimately like, oh, well, this doesn't matter, and then you find something, and then you continue, and then you increase to grow, and then you level off, and then you're like, oh man, like this sucks, until you continue to go up. So that was summer 2012 that I had initially felt empty. Again, I felt that nothing I did mattered, and I fell back into a depression once that happened. I mean, you hear all the time how people feel sad, and sometimes it doesn't matter how a being is feeling. They might say, I feel sad, or I'd rather feel sad than feel nothing at all. I will say feeling empty does actually suck quite a bit. I fell back into a depression, and of course, to numb the pain, that there's a very specific pain and sadness that only that empty feeling can provide. And so, again, my drug of choice, as you all know by now, is alcohol. It's the most abundant, the most addictive. It's crazy that it's legal over other things, but I fell back into it. It helped me numb the pain. So between 2015 and 2020, I started drinking quite a bit. Now, I was able to limit it in certain moments. And the surroundings, the crowd, the people that I talk to, they heavily drinkers. It's not like I drank alone all the time, but there were some times that I drank alone. And then my friends at the time, they drank a lot. And then, so like summer 2016, for example, I was able to get a good rhythm going of going to the gym every single day, go to school. I was getting paid because I was in the Air National Guard, and I was living in Illinois at the time with my parents, and I just would go to school. I would go to drill once a month, and because the nature of my contract, I got paid about $1,000 a month to go to school and go to drill once a month, and that was enough to cover my bills. I lived fairly frugally, beyond not having to pay rent or utilities or food. So what did I do with all that time? Well, I went to the gym. We had a gym out at the base. It was 15 minutes away, so I would go and work out there. And I was able to, I talked in episode 2 about replacing one addiction with the other, so I was able to balance my desire to drink with getting stronger over time at the gym. So throughout 2016, I was able to get to a point where I was getting fit and drinking only on the weekends with my friends. But that all changed after I went to Germany. And when you go somewhere for the military, typically the only thing there is to do is drink and be social. So there you have it. I fell back into it. So there was that slight moment of reprieve where I was able to balance and manage, and secretly harboring depression. I say secretly because my personality is one which my coping mechanism is humor. So I can wear this mask and people don't know how I am feeling. I've gotten really good at becoming a chameleon throughout my life and just masking how I truly feel. I'm coming out of that now. So it's not like I keep everyone on their toes or I'm harboring a secret pain. I'm better at all of that management now, and being on the other side of this storm comparatively, it's just night and day difference. And there's something I'm going to get into either later in this video or in another video where I kind of discuss what it was like to be on the other side and how I used to view that time period. But again, me going off on a separate tirade, the point of all of this is that I stopped growing in general. So my spiritual progression stopped. I'm in the false enlightenment. I think I have figured it all out, that life has essentially no point, and that created an emptiness in me. So I used meditation solely as a tool, and I essentially tried to seek out a normal existence. I started dating the wrong people. This was a time where I actually really wanted to settle down and seek out a normal life, have kids, have a relationship. I felt like I was ready to get to that point now that I figured out all this other stuff, because the majority of my life was, I don't know why I was so obsessed with it when I was a kid, but I really was obsessed with trying to figure out what this life was all about, and trying to figure out like what the end of the world was going to be like, things like that. Like I focused a lot on the book of Revelation when I was like 12 years old. I would sit there and just ponder. I'd watch all these History Channel shows regarding the topic, and I had my own theories at the time, and all of that has gone out the window. But I was really focused on having a normal life at this point, just trying to repair what I had missed out on. So I guess that's one viewpoint of it. But either way, I was definitely dating the wrong people. Now, as I had said before, in high school, I thought I was not an attractive person, and anyone who was perceived to be flirting with me was just being nice or kidding. That stemmed from childhood bullying. But here we are now, and I am an adult, and I realized that's not the case, and women are not like that. So I'm playing into it. I am actively trying to get into a serious relationship, find my mate, and try to settle down. That led to 2015 being a tumultuous year. I realized that ex that I had talked about in episode 2, I was done with, and I left her before I went to tech school, and I never went back. And then when I did get back, there was a whole saga with this other girl that lasted for 5 months, but it felt like it lasted for 3 years. It was horrible. She wanted me, she didn't want me, and I had dealt with that for 10 years. So after 5 months, I just gave her an ultimatum and said, look, you either want me or you don't. And she was like, you better move on. And I was like, all right, I'm saving myself, I'm getting out of here. So that was pretty much the kibosh on that. And then there was a single mom of 2 that I dated that was a couple years older than me. And she really wanted to move too fast. She wanted me to move in with her 1 month into dating. Huge red flag for me. I like to take things slow, and the energy in that was too chaotic for my taste. I like a peaceful environment. It's too much chaos. Of course, it comes with the territory with children. That things are going to be chaos. So I did not want that, essentially, and that also only lasted a couple months. So spring 2016, I become single, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna focus on me for a while. And my plan was strictly to not get into anything too serious, just focus on me, whatever that meant. I just knew that I could not find happiness in other people. I was attracting too much chaos. So I started getting into the law of attraction a little bit. And that's the thing about your, I guess you could call it the subconscious. You could call it the soul. You could call it whatever. It will guide you, and you have to listen to your gut. That's what we call our gut. It will tell us things, we'll get feelings, and we can either choose to follow it, or we just absolutely will not follow it. That's ultimately up to us, how we decide to handle the feeling that we feel from it. In this instance, I had slowly over my lifetime learned that, okay, I need to follow my instincts. So I followed it and became single to focus on me. That was before I went to Germany. And in Germany, as I said earlier, I fell back into just drinking regularly because there was nothing else to do. And I guess peer pressure, it was kind of like a working vacation in that instance. So went to Germany, got drunk pretty much every night, only visited the gym once while I was there, and then never looked back. I was right back to drinking pretty much every single day. But while I was doing that, the law of attraction is working because, again, I decided to stay single until the right one came along. I'm not seeking happiness or validation in someone else. I already felt validated, already felt like I was a catch, number one. Number two, I felt like I was definitely worth having a high quality partner that valued me and wasn't trying to use me to fix their problems. They just wanted a companion, right? I think this is where, my previous relationships had taught me that I didn't want someone who was, who needed me, essentially. I did not want someone who needed me, but rather someone who wanted me. So anyone who's looking for me to solve their problems is not the energy that I'm looking for at all in a partner. And I steered clear of a lot of people. So then the law of attraction is the point that I want to focus on right now, and manifesting. So law of attraction and manifesting, how does it work? You make a decision, you stick to it, and those thoughts are energy, right? So believe I've talked about this before, but if I have not, I apologize. It is a concept that is normal to me. And as we go through, and after I get done with my spiritual awakening, trials and tribulations, and going through everything here, I will make dedicated videos to certain things, even though pretty much everything that I talk about has been validated numerous times. The knowledge is definitely out there in other forms, and you're definitely free to look them up. As I've said before, The Alchemist is a fantastic channel. I have linked her channel before in the description. Couple videos right now have her links, so I highly recommend you check her out. If you have a question on some of the concepts that I am bringing up here in my early stories of awakening. So, getting back into manifesting. This occurs when you make a decision and you stick to it. You focus on that. You're in the moment. You don't let the past alter your course or affect you. You're aware that it happened, but you don't let it bother you. You're over it, right? And you're using those experiences to grow. So you're moving towards what you want in life. And so your thoughts are energy. And when your thoughts and your actions are aligned, you are destined to reach that end point. The way that I have explained it in the past is that everything that is and everything that will be has already come to pass. I haven't gotten into multiple dimensions or anything along those lines. That's a crazy topic for another time, but the best way to think about it is your consciousness is a fixed point. All the possibilities already exist. Anything that has happened and will happen is already there, overlaid in the same space, and you're just hopping between the timelines, and your consciousness is maintaining that memory of the events as you go through. That is how I am envisioning it in my mind right now. So attracting that energy, moving towards the energy. And I had a history with chaotic individuals in the past, and I knew what to avoid in a partner. And luckily, I had a friend who decided to play matchmaker and introduce me to her best friend, who actually happened to live half the country away. I would like to stress here that the way that everything works is very convoluted in this universe, and everything ultimately that you experience is what you should experience. And I was going through a lot, but I had to go through a lot to get to where I wanted and needed to be. So Rose and I date. Her name is Rose. You might have heard me mention her before. I can't recall if I've said her by name or not, but she is my fiance. And if she's listening to this, I love you, babe. So we dated for 7 months. We clicked. I'm not going to tell that story on through these audio logs. It's the best love story ever told. So I'm going to hype it up like that, not tell you about it, and then just let you figure it out from there, let you fantasize about it. But regardless, we dated 7 months long distance, and then I decided to get everything together to move here. I had to transfer bases to come out to this state to meet her. And wouldn't you know it, right before I move, I get a call. I'm in Washington State for a military training, and I get a phone call that my mom was helping my dad, and she fell off of a ladder. She fell off the ladder and right onto her face. We did not know how severe the injury was at the time, but she was taken to the hospital, and she was getting an ink blot test done to figure out what was going on, and it was in those moments that a lot of things started to change. So things happen in stair steps. I've said it before. It's like a staircase. Things will happen, it levels off, it's peaceful, you go through these experiences, and a bunch of things happen, and it levels off, and then, and it's all growth. You take these experiences, and you either choose to grow from them, or they give you trauma, and you have to work through that trauma to be able to grow. And in this instance, within the span of 1 month, my mom fell off a ladder, and then I moved across country. Now, the results of that ink blot test were that it showed that she had what they thought to be at one time 3 brain aneurysms active in her head. So all these things are happening. I'm about to move. My mom is scheduled for neurosurgery to get these brain aneurysms fixed before they burst. And I have fallen out of practicing completely. Meditation, gone. After she had fallen, and again, I went on a military exercise, so I was drinking all the time after that. I was drinking again, hardcore. And I remember after moving, I would just stress. I was just this gigantic ball of stress. So, and my drinking was at an all-time high. So I was legit just drinking a bottle of wine a day. I would wake up. And this is after I moved. And Rose and I were living together. It was very early on. I would wake up, crack open a bottle of wine at 11 a.m. and start drinking. Now, she went to work and I was settling, and I still had some money saved up from the move because I wasn't going to spend all my money and move without a little bit of a buffer. So I saved up the money that I could sit on and drink it every day while she's going to work, and sober up by the time she got home, if I was lucky. And then we'd hang out for a while and, just live together, do what normal people do when they live together. So the point of this and how it pertains to my journey is I was not living up to my potential. I wasn't growing. I was just drinking literally all the time. So this lasts a while, and this is going to be a period that lasts for some time. My drinking did not slow down at all. Mom had the neurosurgery a month after I moved. It went fine, but I carried over that constant thing. I got a job. I had customer service again, and just continued to drink and drink and drink and drink. And I even stopped working out because I would wake up, go to work. After work, I'd go directly to the gym, work out for a bit, about between an hour to 2. So it'd be like 8:30. It'd be after 8 p.m. that I'd get home and hang out. So then early 2018 comes along, and I get sick. I don't know what it was, but all I got out of the doctor when I went to the urgent care is that you got a virus. Here's a doctor's note. Stay home. And I was just like, okay. So I got a week off work, basically, with a mysterious illness. And then after I got over my illness, I did not go back to work. Now, this kicked off a whole thing where my PT test was coming up in a couple months. So I start to work out, to train for it, and I hurt my hip. So I have had hip issues in the past, briefly, nothing like this. This kicked off something where I had to deal with this nagging injury until earlier this year. It was 18 to 2022. 4 years. It was 4 years that I had to deal with this injury. And it was misdiagnosed at first as sciatica. And I thought it was sciatica for the next year until randomly in early 2019, it shifted to the side. And it literally shifted from one side to the other, and I was like, I don't think that's a pinched nerve. Come to find out, it was actually SI joint inflammation. SI joint standing for sacroiliac joint. It's what allows your hips to flex. And I intend to talk about and make a dedicated video as to the exercises I do to manage that. Because that was another point of growth and contention and trauma that I had to deal with, because I was pretty much in constant pain for the last 4 years. But let's get back to 2018. I stopped working out. Well, what did I do to fill that time? Well, to be fair, I had been writing a novel. I started it in 2015. And then I had finished the first draft in 2018 because I had bought a laptop to focus on writing, and I was getting that going, and got to a point where I was like, all right, I'm stressed because my job at the time was awful. It did not treat its workers well. And what do I mean by that? Well, we're a customer service company over the phone that, we take customer phone calls, and we also have a warehouse. Well, we have multiple clients, but we're going to staff the personnel for these clients. We're going to staff them as low as possible and give each team multiple clients. So, there are clients that we had teams that dealt with 3 separate clients. 3 different systems you had to log into to take notes on your phone call. 3 separate databases to look up people. It was awful. Then you had after call work that you had to do. Oh, well, we have all these promotions that need to go out. So someone has to log off the phones and work specifically on these mailings, print all this stuff off, get these mailings in order, and print out all these labels, get them ready, ship them out. It was not a good experience. So I had a little bit of money saved up again, and I couldn't take the stress anymore. I worked with Rose. We decided, all right, I will quit my job temporarily. I'll find something else to alleviate the stress and get back out there. Now plans changed after that happened, because I suddenly had all this time that I could dedicate to going to the gym and writing my book. So within, I want to say 5 months, I wrote draft 2 of my book, and that's with working out here and there, and drinking heavily a lot. Of course, can't forget that part. So I had completely cut out spirituality from my life between 2018 and 2019. Completely gone. I was no longer meditating. Now, I said I was working out sometimes. Now, that was solely so I could try to prepare for my PT test. So I was running on a treadmill, doing push-ups. Those were legitimately the only things that I was doing, were push-ups. Oh, that's a lie. Push-ups, sit-ups, and running on a treadmill. And military fitness tests are geared at 90% towards your run. So I was trying that. Running is my worst category, and I just had to run. And I never got back to a point with my hip injury to getting back to where I needed to be. And so I was on this continuous cycle of not passing my PT test. And if you don't pass your PT test, you're not in a state where you can be deployed. So I didn't even have the option to go on a deployment. And the unit wanted to kick me out. And it's like, look, I have this medical issue. I had only been in for a couple of years at this point. And it was really to this situation where I was just like, look, I don't want to re-enlist. Just, I had 4 months left on my time when my last PT test came up. And I was like, okay, listen, get a waiver for the run and I'll be good. I had to go through multiple processes to figure that out, to figure out what the process was, because my leadership didn't tell me the first time. I was put in a bad spot, and I got the waiver. We worked it out, and I got an honorable discharge. But I kind of went off topic here, but I had to deal with that pain. So the novel and the time off. I want to get back to that because, as I said a moment ago, we decided I would take a couple months off work. And plans changed. Surprise. It was difficult for me to land a job that was not customer service. But I eventually did. And I again, this whole journey, I feel like I had to go through this because I bet on myself. And I wrote my novel. I spent 5 months trying to write my novel for a contest, right? So I poured my heart, my soul, everything I had into this piece of work, and I submitted it. And then ultimately what happened was I didn't get it. Didn't happen. Didn't even hear a word back. I was not selected. That's okay. But in the meantime, those months built up. And I had gotten deep into credit card debt. Again. Now, one thing I did not touch on before is before I joined the military in 2013, I had a lot of credit card debt. And a car payment. And so I was living with my parents, barely able to keep my head above water. And then I joined the military and was able to pay off my credit card debt because of the bonus and pay off my car. And so that led to me 2016 being able to go to school, get paid, be debt free, have a small credit card to help build up my credit. And then I moved after I had enough money saved up. We moved and started this cycle all over again because I didn't learn the first time. I was making these decisions, all reactionary, and then once I got into a situation that I was comfortable in, I just let go. I didn't hold myself accountable, and it was just happening over and over and over. And where did I find myself at again? In 2019, drunk. Constantly drunk. But then I got a call in August of that year, and it was for a contracting position. It was a recruiting company that I had tried to get with before to transfer into IT, and they paid terribly, come to find out, but it was a lot more than I was making at customer service. So at the time, I thought it was amazing. And so someone from DC calls me, is like, hey, I saw your resume was in our system. Your skill set matches what we need. My skill set was having a base IT knowledge and having a security clearance. Well, okay. Yeah, I'm interested. It's an hour and a half commute. I will eat that. It gets me in the door. It gets me out of customer service. So I commuted to DC every day, starting in October. That was another issue all in itself, is that there was a point where I was speaking directly to the client and not the contractor, not the contracting company, because they sent me there for a training for what they call a NEO, a new employee orientation. They sent me there, and then it was very unclear when I was supposed to go and get the badge. The people who presented the NEO trainings said the next day we had to go to get our badge. So I'm part of 3 people who go to get our badge. And so I have no idea who I need to call. I get in touch. I figure it out. Eventually, I just called a bunch of people, and then turns out we're causing a ruckus. We get our badges, and we go to talk to the core, is what they call him. He's the contract holder. And he's like, I don't know how you got this far without me. We're like, what? He's like, I thought you guys literally needed me to be able to get your badges, but somehow you had all the paperwork you needed. You got through. You got your badges. But I'm going to be honest, guys, we haven't put pen to paper on the contract yet. What? Yeah, so go ahead, record these hours. We'll make sure you get paid and everything, but I don't know when you'll be coming to work. Oh, great. This is late August that this is happening, and that didn't even begin until October. So all in all, between April and October of 2019, I did not have a job. I managed to exhaust all of my savings and amass a lot of debt. And I still paid all my bills, but I was literally at the end of my rope when I got that. So October 2019, my contractor journey begins. And a couple weeks into that job, I have a subscription to Audible. I love Audible. Got into audiobooks. And around Halloween time, I like to get something spooky. So I look in and I decide to go with this book titled The Custodians by an author named Dolores Cannon. Now the synopsis is basically that through hypnosis, people recall being abducted by aliens. Okay, I'll get it. And it was everything I wanted it to be up to a certain point. And there was one performance in there that was difficult for me to get past, but there were spiritual elements thrown in, talking about the afterlife, discussing concepts that go back to spiritualism. And I was like, oh, I heard about that before. And then 2020 happened. And 2020 was a year. Not because of the lockdown, but because right before the lockdown happened, my mom unexpectedly passed away. She had a widowmaker, which is a blood clot in the heart. Well, not in the heart, in the chest. Some sort of blood clot that stops your heart from beating, basically. Just kind of kills you instantly. So that came out of the blue. She had fallen off a ladder in 2017, had the neurosurgery, everything was fine, but through the doctors she was seeing, they had determined that it wasn't just 3 in her brain that she had. There was evidence on her brain that one had burst at one point because there was dried blood there, and it was actually one massive aneurysm that she had. And they had to, it looked like Mickey Mouse's head, and they had to pull a trick to be able to clip it and stop the blood flow to it, to kind of deprive it of what it needed so it would go away. So they got that clipped and it went away, but then they also discovered that there was another aneurysm in her chest, and at the time it was determined that was not something that they needed to worry about. So annually my mother would go get that checked out. Unbeknownst to me, her state was declining pretty bad. She was not there, like, mentally. She slept all the time, all things that I was unaware of, and she was coming up on that appointment. and she passed away. I'm guessing that burst and it clotted and killed her. That is my guess. And it was the thing, as terrible as it was the thing that led me to where I am now. Because I've faced many storms. But standing on the other side of this one, there ain't no way that I was ever as strong as I am right now. So, I'm in the middle of my mourning period, talking about the afterlife. This really gets me into spiritualism. Like, I'm right back into it, because you just lost someone, right? So you want to... This gets me thinking about the afterlife and trying to connect to them and all this stuff. And my friend Michelle links me a video to Dolores Cannon talking about the afterlife. And I'm like, that name sounds familiar. So I go to Audible. Sure enough, The Custodians, the book that I had downloaded just a couple months prior, was by this hypnotist called Dolores Cannon. And turns out that this hypnotist created a method of walking people through the death experience and had walked people through multiple death experiences, and most of them describe the same exact things happening: sequence of events, the light, going into the light, the severing of the cord that tethers the spirit to the body, the healing place, councils. My mind is blown. My world is opened, because this was what I needed. It was a video, a simple video of her talking about life after death. It was her echoing the sentiment that I had said for years, and that was that organized religion was a means of control through fear, and that they had taken a concept that was true and twisted it into their version of control. That was validated by this person in this video. The link to that video will be in this description if you would like to watch it. So that was my introduction to Dolores Cannon, and I tried to go back and listen to The Custodians to get more info from it, but I couldn't. Now, unfortunately, the lockdown happened very soon after this event happened, and I was kind of in a tight spot. So I could not really quantify spending the money I would have to spend to get the book that I wanted, which was Between Death and Life, which is something I brought up in the very first Fenix log. I would recommend you listen to that book. I will always recommend listening to that book. It's a fantastic read. So, I can't afford this book, and I am heavily in the mourning process, and I'm drinking every single night. I'm talking about drinking myself into complete oblivion, and Rose, bless her soul, she was patient, she was supportive, as any good partner would be, should be, and to this day, I appreciate everything that she put up with to get me to this point, to heal me back to this point. But I digress. I got another job after that contract ended and everything got shut down. And that was doing asset management for another government contract, but they were much closer. It was about a 15-minute drive instead of an hour and a half commute one way. And it was at this time where I was very stressed out because I was good at my job. I was organized. And I was put in charge of a refresh project we were having, a laptop refresh project. I'm not going to get into the details, but it was a lot. It was a whole heck of a lot that I had to do, and it was not something that I necessarily wanted to do. I was dealing with pressure from myself that I needed to start on draft 3 of my book, but because of the recent traumas and the trauma of 2019 in that consuming the entirety of my life, I really did not want to go back to it. But instead, I just drank a bunch and watched anime, watched videos of slapped ham, pretty much anything that I could do to cope. And I had forgotten that in 2019 I had downloaded an audiobook on recommendation called Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink. I decided to revisit it because of all the stress I was under from being put in charge of this project and really not wanting to be, not feeling like I was doing what I needed to do or fulfilling my purpose. So I was really depressed, really stressed out. I put this book on one day, and it was all about accountability. And this is one of the most integral pieces of my growth up to this point, and really changed my life. It absolutely changed my life. I would recommend this book right along Between Death and Life. So it basically, in a roundabout way, just instilled an accountability mindset within me. And I saw things differently. I was perceiving them completely differently than I was before. I started from accountability first. I would hold myself to my word. All the things that I had done in the past before I had started drinking and gotten mixed up with that ex, and everything that I embodied when I was younger and very rigid, I started to embody. But again, I started to embody it again, and it changed everything. I just remember, yes, I'm stressed, but I said I was going to do this thing, and I'm in charge of this thing. And when you're faced with greatness, you have to rise to the challenge, and your life will become great after that, and all that fun stuff. Sure. But there was also this element of love and funness and just this proud feeling that was swelling up in me from actually living up to my potential. Everyone had told me I had potential for the longest time, but I never lived up to it. And this is the reason that I wasn't living up to that potential. So once I had this accountability instilled and I understood the concepts of extreme ownership, professionally, my life changed. And I needed that professional piece in place to get to where I needed to be successful in my personal life. But I still couldn't get back into practicing spirituality again. I wanted to, but I couldn't because I was still mourning. The mourning process was really only just beginning, and I'm in the midst of this contractor journey. I'm gonna put you in my shoes. The year is 2020. I am still an alcoholic. I am in the middle of a global pandemic. The world is shut down, and day to day, it is not clear if I will still have a job, because the way contracting works is they will basically fire you for any reason on the spot. That's what happened throughout most of my contracting journey. I got a call from the DC job, and they said, it was a Friday at 5:30, and they said, sorry everyone, your jobs are terminated. I got this other job. I worked it for 4 months, and then I come in and they tell me, hey, we misspent our budget, so we're going to have to let all the contractors go. This is your last week. Then I got another job. So on the flip side of this, of contracting, is that someone's always hiring. There's a job. You could lose your job tomorrow. There's no stability there. But if you're willing to work and you have the right attitude, you can just be picked up by anyone. And the way contracting essentially is, it's just an ongoing job interview. If you're good at your job and you become an asset, they will want to hire you. That is simply how that works. The accountability mindset helped me with that. But I digress. I outlined those points. Now here's the big point. I lost my mom. I'm in mourning. The wound is fresh. There's a lot of other dark stuff that was going on at that time, but I'm not going to put my family's business out there like that beyond what you already needed to know. So I have extra stress from back home because of that. I balloon up to 178 pounds because of all my drinking and my lack of working out. And that brings us to 2021. That's where the next phase begins. I said back in the first episode that I wanted to go over my growth between January 2021 and the ending of 2022 and going into January 2023. All the goals I set then are things that I have accomplished over the last 2 years. Now, I was in a bad spot. I was still mourning. The pain had died down a little bit. I had gotten used to it. But the pain was still present. And I was learning how to deal with it. Still drunk? Absolutely. Drinking a little bit less? Not really. But wanting to get better. Really wanting to get over it. Oh, that was there. Wanting to get over 2019, the debt mountain that I had created. Oh, I wanted to be there. I was 33, sick of living paycheck to paycheck. With a fresh sense of accountability put in my mind, I was ready. I knew I could achieve something. People have told me my entire life that I have potential. I just don't know how to use it. I was sick of not knowing. And I took life by the horns and I went for it. Now, that sounds great. That sounds dandy. It was hard. It was very hard. But luckily, I embodied the extreme ownership mentality. And I started handling my finances. And I continued having hope. I got back into spirituality. I bought Dolores Cannon's books. I started to read. I started to get better. I discovered QHHT. And my friends, that is where today's episode is going to end. 5 years. Covered over the course of roughly an hour. And yeah, most of it was bad. I could have summed it all up by saying I was drunk and I didn't practice spirituality. That wouldn't hit. That wouldn't be relatable. Life is about balance ultimately. And that is what these audio logs are also going to be about. So, with that, I cannot wait to get into the next episode where we talk about QHHT, Dolores Cannon, and how that helped me break out of the false light and really seeing true growth and becoming who I am today. I want to thank you so much for watching this video. My name is Fenix Rising, reminding you always to embrace the light and spread the light. I'll see you next time.